Hello everyone, I'm Samir Nouri, Product Manager at JVC Kenwood for Professional Video Products, and today I would like to introduce you to some new PTZ cameras that we have recently launched. Hello, in this tutorial I would like to introduce you to the new KY-PZ 400 and KY-PZ 200 cameras, which we have set up here in a network environment together with the RMLP100 controller, which can control the new cameras as well as the older models, so you can mix and match our cameras with this controller. We have a network setup also including a PC, which allows you to control the cameras through the web GUI, and a decoder which can decode the network stream signals from the camera. The network setup is basically in the same IP address range, so they're all starting with 192.168, and the controller, for instance, has the end number 85, the KY-PZ 200 has end number 10, and the KY-PZ 400 ends on 89. The decoder has the end number 99, and the PC is ending on number 5. This allows all the devices to see each other, and we can basically send signals between the devices and send streams from one camera to a decoder, another stream from the camera to the PC to be decoded in VLC video line client. And I will demonstrate now the individual GUI web interfaces of the cameras so you can see the possible settings for these cameras. In addition to being able to control the cameras through the RMLP100 and the web interface, there is also an accessory in the form of a remote controller which can control up to 4 cameras. You can set up each camera with the remote controller, and you can move the cameras, and you can focus and zoom by using this remote controller. This makes setup of the cameras very easy. Now I'd like to introduce you to the internal structure of the KY-PZ 400 and KY-PZ 200. As you can see, the KY-PZ 400 has a 4K camera front end and 2 encoders. There is a main encoder, which gives you high resolution encoded signals, and a sub-encoder for lower resolution signals. The camera has a 3G SDI output and an HDMI output. You can choose to output the signal either through HDMI in resolutions up to 4K or through 3G SDI in resolutions up to 1080p 50 or 60. In the network area, you have several formatters. So for the main encoder, you can format your signal at the same time as RTSP protocol, SRT protocol, RTMP or RTMPS, and as NDI. So the camera is capable of outputting several different signal protocols at the same time. At the same time also you can output another substream with a lower resolution as RTSP or RTMPS. All the streams are available through the RJ45 network connector, and this network connector is also capable of powering the camera through PoE. Now let's look at the KY-PZ 200. The KY-PZ 200 is very similar in its internal structure to the 400, but this is a full HD camera, so the camera front end is full HD. What also distinguishes the KY-PZ 200 from the 400 is that it has an extra USB 3 connector. Because the KY-PZ 200 is capable of supporting UVC mode, so you can use it like a web camera. If you use the USB 3 connector in UVC mode, all the internal encoding, however, will be switched off as indicated by this selection switch here. Generally, you have also a main encoder and a sub-encoder, and the camera can also format the encoded signals as RTSP, SRT, RTMP or RTMPS or NDI. There is, however, a smaller version of the KY-PZ 100 which does not support NDI, and in that case you get a more economical camera with all the other encoding formats, but without the NDI encoding. Again, this camera can be powered through the RJ45 connector with PoE. You have the same HDMI connector and 3G SDI connectors to output resolutions up to 1080p 50 or 60. Finally, let's take a look at the inner workings of the KY-PZ 200 without NDI. As you can see, Again, the camera has the same high definition front end. It has the JVC USB connector, so you can use it like a web camera. It has the same main encoder and sub encoder, so it can do all the encodings just like the KYPZ200N with the NDI, but this one doesn't have the NDI block here. So you can use it with RTMP, RTMPS, SRT, RTSP. You can output 2 different encoded streams, and you can of course also power the camera via PoE by using the RJ45 connector. And this camera also has HDMI and SDI 3G connectors to output a high resolution of 1080p 50 or 60. Now I would like to walk you through the menus of the KYPZ400 in the Web GUI. I have opened now the Web GUI here, and as you can see, there are different settings available. There is a live image, which you can see at the moment. There are video settings, image settings, system settings, network settings, and more. So in order to control the camera, we have a cursor block here, so I can move the camera. And also a very important detail here, if you would like to control the menu of the camera itself, you can switch to the OSD here by selecting OSD, and you will see the camera menu appear here on screen. Of course, you can control this camera menu also by using the remote controller, but if the camera is in a remote location, then you might want to control the camera menus through the Web GUI. Now we will go back to the PTZ controls. The camera menu will disappear, and I would walk you through the individual settings. In the video settings, you can see the different encoding parameters of the camera. You can choose as a codec H.264 or H.265 or motion JPEG. H.265 of course is more efficient, so for the same bitrate you get a higher quality, or for the same quality you get roughly half the bitrate that you would need for H.264. You can select different resolutions, 4K resolution, Full HD resolution, or lower resolutions here for the main encoder. And here you can select a bitrate. Of course, the higher the bitrate, the better the quality. And you have a selection of different frame rates. You can choose to encode in constant bitrate or variable bitrate. Constant bitrate, as the name says, will give you the same bitrate for different content. Variable bitrate will give you varying bitrates depending on the complexity of the content. More complex content in front of the camera will produce higher bitrates. Simple content with many uniform surfaces will give you lower bitrates. Here, of course, you have the second stream, the sub-encoder, and you can again choose different encoding schemes and different resolutions. This is normally set to a resolution close to VGA resolution. And again, you can select a frame rate here for the sub-encoder. The choices you make here are valid for all these streams that the camera outputs. So regardless if you use SRT, RTMPS, or NDI, all the streams that are output by the camera will have the same encoding parameters. So let's take a look at the network settings. In the network settings, of course, you can select the IP address of the camera. You can select a fixed IP or DHCP. In this case, we have given the camera a fixed IP address, and these settings are basically the same that you would find on any networking device. Here you have different port settings, for instance here for the RTSP, RTP ports, and for controlling the camera, you can select different ports. For the standard protocol that you can also use to control the camera via RS485, you have a fixed port that cannot be changed. Here you have the settings for RTMPS. For RTMP, you can use the camera with both encoders to output a mainstream with high resolution and a substream with low resolution in RTMP to the destination of your choice, such as Facebook or YouTube. Here you have the SRT settings. You can configure the camera as listener caller, and later we will introduce the rendezvous mode. And again, you can choose the IP address to send the stream to. You can choose the port that you will be using for SRT. You configure SRT protocol. You can switch on and off RTSP authentication, and you can use multicast. And there are many other settings here in the network area. NDI has a separate setting here. You can basically set up the NDI output of the camera, and the camera will normally run automatically in NDI. The conclusion from this is that the camera can output several different streams at the same time. So I will show you now the NDI output of the camera. We're using the NDI Studio Monitor application, which is part of the NDI tools that you can download from the NewTek website. As you can see here, I can also control the camera. PTZ moves through the NDI interface. And I can also record stored positions. Simultaneously to outputting NDI, we have set up 2 extra streams. We have an SRT stream and we have an RTSP stream. So as you can see, the camera can output 3 streams at the same time. You could add an RTMP or RTMPS stream at the same time. All those will be basically fed through the RJ45 connector and will be distributed through your network depending on the setup that you would like. Other settings, of course, are available in the camera, such as system settings. Here you can set the system password. You can also reboot the camera. Any changes in the encoding parameters or network setups will require a reboot of the camera. There are some basic image settings also available, which will allow you to change brightness, saturation, contrast, but there are more elaborate settings if you use the remote controller or the camera menu itself through the PTZ OSD control capability here. And there is an audio page which allows you to determine audio encoding parameters, so you can change the audio bitrate and you can change the sensitivity of the audio input. This basically concludes our basic walkthrough through the menu of the KYPZ 400. The KYPZ 200 is very similar, the only difference being that the 200 does not have the UHD 4K setting for the resolution, but all the other settings are basically the same. So there you have it, the introduction to our new series of PTZ cameras with 4K and full HD resolution. These cameras are capable of producing several streams at the same time and support multi-streaming with SRT, RTSP, RTMPS and NDI all simultaneously. I am sure these cameras will be interesting products for remote production setups, schools, universities and industrial use. Thank you for watching this presentation.